right. Hello, how you folks doing today? It's tomorrow is St. Patrick's Day, so by the time you hear and listen to this podcast, I hope you had a great St. Patrick's Day. And today I have some fun topics, and the first on my agenda, last week, the wife and I, we went to this Van Gogh exhibit. If you have not done the Van Gogh exhibit, I highly recommend it. It is actually really, really cool. And I heard that from a lot of people, so I checked it out, and I loved it. The wife loved it. I'm telling you, take the kids there if you can do that. And then obviously in the news, this whole the war in Russia has been a freaking nightmare. One of the things I've told the younger lawyers is one opportunity for lawyers to help in the near to mid future is there may be, I anticipate that in the very soon future, okay, how this ends, there's obviously going to be a lot of people that are displaced, lost their homes, lost family members, lost their business, lost their livelihood, all of the above. And there may very well be some sort of war reparations, and a lot of lawyers could help people that way. And one of the reasons I knew about this was when I was in law school, there was one of my professors, because I went to law school in the 90s, okay? I'm a little old, but I went to law school in the 90s, and I had a professor who, he went to law school in, I think, the 50s, right? And one of the things he did when he first started is he was helping people get reparations from World War II. And it was a very complicated system to, all these people, they had family members that were lost in World War II, and, loved ones, and they lost their business and this and that. And so he was helping them as a lawyer doing that. And he said it was a very, very good type of work. There was also, obviously, after 9/11, there was a lot of lawyers that helped people kind of recover from that as well. And I anticipate that the same thing will happen here. So lawyers here in the States, they could represent people that moved to the States from Ukraine, or people that live in the States that lost family members in the Ukraine, or they could even, under certain rules and regulations, they could do what we call international law and help people out there. Okay, so those are interesting things that have kind of like come up during these past few weeks with what's going on in the world. Now, what today's topic is the Cuomo family, and specifically today, it came out that Chris Cuomo filed a lawsuit against CNN. In fact, it's technically not the lawsuit is when you file something in a court. What he did is he filed in binding arbitration. It works out to the same thing because they had an agreement that instead of filing it in court, that they would go to binding arbitration. So other than it's a different venue, it still works as a lawsuit, okay? The Cuomo family, they have had a very long history, and up until probably just a couple of years ago, that history was very good, okay? And then, obviously a couple of years ago, then it started turning sour. I would like to say the family history starts with Mario Cuomo. He was born during the Great Depression in 1932, and actually maybe right before the Great Depression started. His family was from Italy. So Mario Cuomo's parents were born in Italy. They had immigrated to the United States, and then Mario Cuomo was born in 1932 in Queens, in New York City. And he was a good chap, right? Like, he worked really hard, and he ultimately went to college at St. John's University. And one thing I did not know is he played professional baseball. So Mario Cuomo, the late Mario Cuomo, he played professional baseball. He started with St. John's. Then he played for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And then he was on the farm league a little bit. And the poor guy, he got hit in the head with a baseball in a pitch. And it was so bad that he was hospitalized for 6 days and he had tremendous head injuries. And that ended his professional baseball career, Mario Cuomo. So he did the worst imaginable thing after that. He went to law school, right? So he goes to law school, the poor guy. No, I'm just kidding. It's a good thing to do. So he goes to law school, and then in law school, he goes to in New York, and then when he graduated, he started working at various law firms. And the first law firm, I believe it was the first or second law firm he was working at, he represented the late Fred Trump. Okay, if that sounds familiar, that's Donald Trump's dad. So you have Mario Cuomo as a lawyer in the 1950s representing Donald Trump's dad, right? Can you imagine going back then and telling them, hey, in about 70 years from now, all of your sons are going to be involved in these big battles and fighting each other. And one is going to be a president and this and that, right? They would have said, you're crazy. Okay. So he represented Donald Trump. And then when Mario Cuomo kind of got his stripes as a lawyer, I'm sorry, did I say he represented Donald Trump? He represented the late Fred Trump. And then he got his stripes as a lawyer in the following. There was one area in Queens that the city wanted to build a high school. And to build this high school, it was in this, of all things, it was called the Corona neighborhood in Queens. Okay. And they wanted to build a high school. So there was a lot of homes where the high school would be constructed. And what do you have to do when you have to build or you have to get rid of those homes? The government is allowed to just take people's property. All right. It's the Fifth Amendment. It's like they could take property as long as they have, due course and due compensation. They could take someone's property. It's like, and also eminent domain, it's also called. So what happened was there was a lot of poor residents and homeowners that their homes were being taken away. So what happened was we had Mario Cuomo representing them. All right. This is in the 60s. And he represented them. He did a really good job. He became very popular for representing these homeowners when they were losing their homes for this high school. By the way, similar things happened in Los Angeles when they were building Dodger Stadium and Chavez Ravine. They had to displace a lot of homeowners so they could build Dodger Stadium and kind of the similar things. The government says, we need this land for, to build a freeway here or to build some sort of off-ramp to get to the stadium or the stadium property, things like that. So, it's an interesting battle. So anyway, this is when Mario Cuomo got his stripes. And then in the early 70s, he ran for lieutenant governor, who you could, I don't know, what's a better way? A vice president, but like vice governor, but they call it lieutenant governor. I mean, it's a little different. So he won in 1974, and that's when his political career began. And then in the early 80s, he ran for mayor of New York City. He won that. And then ultimately, he ran for governor of New York. And he won as governor of New York, and he became the governor of New York. And then our friend Chris Cuomo was his son. Okay. And this is where now we get to our lawsuit here. All right. Chris Cuomo, very quickly, in the early 2000s, now Chris Cuomo, you won't believe it, he worked for CNN, but when he started his career, he started on Fox News, okay? And then he went to ABC, and then Chris Cuomo, debatably, a lot of people argue that his career was helped, maybe not, in 2011 when Chris Cuomo's older brother, Andrew Cuomo, became the governor of New York. Did it help his career? I don't know. I don't think it hurt his career. All right. Because 2 years later, he got a big bump up, and he was hired by CNN. Now, don't get me wrong. It could be, he was also, a hard worker and he did some pretty incredible things. He, when he was with ABC, I think it was ABC, he was in Iraq and, covering news, and his outfit, like his journalist crew, they like sidestepped a bomb or something. They were it was like a roadside bomb or something. He was almost killed. So, I mean, he paid his dues, obviously, to be fair. So in 2011, Chris Cuomo's older brother, Andrew Cuomo, becomes the governor of New York. And then in 2013, shortly thereafter, Chris Cuomo becomes, he gets hired by CNN. Oh, man, one interesting fact was Mario Cuomo died the same day that Andrew Cuomo was sworn in as governor. It was really crazy. He was like on his deathbed, and somehow he stayed, like he lived. Like I think he just wanted to. He was fighting, and he lived to see his son, become the governor. And then that same day he died he was having like really, really bad heart issues and other health issues. All right. And then, so in 2013, Chris Cuomo works at CNN, and he really made a name for himself. I mean, he's energetic. He has, a lot of charisma when he talks, and he's a good, he was a good host, and he obviously, climbed the ranks. And then he hosted Cuomo Primetime. Let's cue in the music. Right, of Cuomo Primetime.
All right. The House Intelligence Committee.
And he was making, a lot of progress. He was doing really good. One day he interviewed his brother, Governor Cuomo. And then right after that, in 2013, CNN then made a new rule saying, okay, no more Chris Cuomo interviewing his brother, Andrew Cuomo, because it doesn't look right. You have the journalist interviewing his own brother. He's obviously going to be biased. And all that. So they disallowed him from interviewing his brother. So he never interviewed his brother again until COVID. COVID happens. And Andrew Cuomo was doing such a phenomenal job during COVID. Okay, a lot of people are starting to yell. I could even hear it from the podcast. Oh, Andrew Cuomo did it. Okay, what I mean is he did a phenomenal job especially in the beginning of COVID, having these daily news briefings and kind of explaining things to the public and talking about how things are going and what's going to happen and this and that. And it was so popular. And then Chris Cuomo himself caught COVID, and he caught it early on, and he was really sick. And he was like in his basement. And then CNN then changed its rule and allowed and encouraged Chris Cuomo to start interviewing Andrew Cuomo on the air. All right. And ratings were just shot up, especially because it was COVID. People were staying home watching the news all day. Andrew Cuomo was getting very popular with the daily briefings, and Chris Cuomo had a great show to begin with. So, all of that contributed to CNN getting kind of a boost in ratings. Then things started hitting the fan, okay? And you know what I mean when I say hit the fan. It definitely wasn't flowers hitting the fan, all right? What started happening is, one, the governor was accused of misstating the cause of deaths or where deaths were happening in COVID. And a large part of it was people, at the nursing homes and when I was a kid, I used to call the old folks home, but I'm not going to call that anymore because I think I'll be there soon, right? Okay. We'll just call it the cool folks home from now on. Okay. So people in the cool folks home, when they got really sick from COVID, they were transferred to a hospital. And then, sadly, a lot of them died at the hospital. So the way the New York was categorizing those deaths were hospital deaths. And then a lot of people said, no, you should have characterized them as nursing home deaths. So that was a big problem for the governor. And then to make matters worse, he got accused of sexual harassment. This is the governor, by a lot of people, right? Like a lot of women were accusing him of sexual harassment. It was fun. He said things like, I'm Italian. We kiss people. It was just, I'm being friendly, but it was pretty bad. The allegations against him and people were, filing reports and coming out, and women were coming out like, I don't know, I might be wrong, but it was at least over a dozen as I recall. So that kind of did the governor in, okay? And then he ends up resigning. Now, what Chris Cuomo did is he was helping his brother during like the investigation. He was helping his brother kind of with PR advice, okay? And he was kind of maybe like doing some research, things like that, right? And CNN knew about it, that Chris Cuomo was doing it, and he told them, they said later, well, he didn't tell us exactly the extent. Of course, Chris Cuomo says he did. Nonetheless, in November, this is now, I'm going to get to exact days because this lawsuit that Chris Cuomo filed seeking $125 million from CNN, okay, the actual days are very important. And as a lawyer, oh my God, sometimes in depositions and in lawsuits, like it's like we take what you and I, right, look at as a normal day. It's like then we analyze it. And there's been some cases, for years, we just kind of go over what happened in on a Tuesday, then on a Wednesday, So this is kind of what's gonna end up happening in this lawsuit. So I'll be specific about the days. So it was November 30, 2021. CNN discloses, okay, we are going to indefinitely suspend Chris Cuomo. Okay. Then on November 31. Nah, just kidding. There's no November 31. On December 1st, they started, they hired this law firm called Carvath and a bunch of other people's last names who are no longer living. Okay. So that is a big law firm. And they kind of say, hey, can you do this investigation for us? Just to get an independent company to look over Chris Cuomo's handlings of, what happened. And then just coincidentally, like that day, an anonymous person alleged that Chris Cuomo back way before he was with CNN, acted inappropriately with her, like sexually inappropriately with her. And nobody ever got her name. Nobody, Chris Cuomo never got to have his people kind of question her or look into the allegations and things like that. That was December 1. And somehow that big law firm, and I know how big law firms, ordinarily, they love to take years to investigate something, okay? I'm not going to say it's because they could bill more hours that way, because that wouldn't be cool if I said that. So I'm just not going to say that, okay? So ordinarily, they just take years to investigate something. Somehow, this big law firm in 3 days, from December 1 to December 3rd and 4th, they come out and they kind of finalize their decision and say that, okay, Chris Cuomo acted inappropriately, okay? And then on December 4th, CNN fires him, completely fires him and says that, he acted inappropriately. There's these there's allegations of sexual misconduct, things like that, right? And obviously, Chris Cuomo becomes livid. I mean, he's making, tens of millions of dollars here working for CNN, and then he gets fired. And now comes the Joe Samo part that I love the most, the lawsuit, right? And this is going to be an interesting lawsuit for sure. And there's a few things that us lawyers, these are very important topics, okay? The one thing is this, and everyone listening, has to know the difference. There's basically, you could split up all employments into two categories, and that is an at-will employment and then a term employment, okay? And what that means, an at-will employment, which is most people in the world, especially if you're working, for under like $40 an hour, it's what's called an at-will employment ordinarily, which means you can quit anytime you want, and you can get fired anytime the employer wants to fire you. Okay. So an at-will employment, you can quit, you can get fired anytime. Okay. Now there's a joke that lawyers say, not really a joke, but there's a saying that the employer, if there's an at-will employment, they could fire the employee for any reason at all, except the wrong reason. Okay, it sounds kind of funny, but okay. So they can fire the employee for any reason they want in an at-will employment, except the wrong reason. And what they mean by that, us lawyers, is you can't fire them for reasons like, like a racial reason, okay, or like a religious reason, like if it's some sort of like, let's fire all the, whatever, the Catholics, right, or something to that nature, or if somebody's exercising their religious beliefs, then they get fired. So you can't fire for that. It can't be like a gender discrimination violation. It also, in certain respects, cannot be if somebody is like a free speech issue, or if they kind of make a complaint to the government about some sort of workplace condition. They can't get fired. There have been so many interesting lawsuits over that issue. You could fire somebody anytime you want, except for the wrong reason. For example, like some of the funny ones you could say is, there have been these cases, and I think one of them was in San Diego. There was like a police officer who he wasn't making enough money as a police officer, you can say. So then he started posting and selling like naked photos of himself, right? And somehow it got to the police department that he was doing that. So they fired him. It was an at-will employment, and the dispute was that he said, hey, this is free speech, and you're firing me for something that's a protected activity. I'm just my free speech, naked photos of myself. And the police department said, no, it's not really free speech, and it hurts our division. We're going to have a lack of credibility. We got a police officer that, they're supposed to be maintaining standards and, wearing the black, full sleeve and pants and, and a helmet, and they have to look authoritative. And then you got naked pictures of him, right? And so the police department won that one. There was another case, a flight attendant, same thing. She started posting kind of, she was posting provocative photos of herself. Let's just leave it at that, right? In fact, let's just cue up those posters. No, just kidding. This is a family program, okay? So anyway, she had a great name on social media. It was something like the Queen of the Skies or something, right? She was a flight attendant. Anyway, so they fired her, and that was an issue. I think she had a much better case because it's like, I'm a flight attendant. It's not like I'm a police officer. I'm not like enforcing laws, and I'm not authoritative. And you know what I'm saying? Like, come on. So she had a better case than him. So that is the at-will employment. And a lot of lawsuits today, people got fired if they didn't, want to get a COVID vaccine, saying, oh, it's my religious belief, right? I don't want to get one. And so it's like they get fired. So there's a dispute. Oh, is this a true religious? Are they getting fired because of religious discrimination? Blah, blah, blah. So many lawyers have made a full-time profession arguing about the firing of at-will employees. Okay. And just for the heck of it, if you've been fired illegally, call Joe Samo. I've always loved to say that. He will fight for your rights. 619-672-1741. Call Joe Samo. All right. Okay. So anyhow, then there was the at-will employment, right? And then the other one was the term. The term employment usually covers the higher and more sophisticated jobs, okay? For example, like the head coaches of football and baseball teams, they ordinarily will sign a contract for, 8 years, okay, or 5 years or 10 years, whatever the heck it could be. Or the better players will sign a contract for 5 years or 10 years, okay, like the Joe Montanas or the Tom Bradys, they could sign long-term contracts. If for other players that aren't as good, the team isn't as worried if this guy leaves the team or not. They'll just sign like a contract for like that game or that year, So they could, would be more of an at-will employment. So a lot of times, like the head coaches or CEOs, things like that, they'll sign a contract for a term, and then people like Chris Cuomo. Okay, so he signed a contract with CNN that said he'll be the host of Cuomo Primetime for, let's say, 12 years. And he's set to get $120 million. All right. The specifics are not like readily available. So, I'm just, whatever, guesstimating. Now, why would they do that instead of doing an at-will employment? Because before like CNN starts investing a lot of money in advertising and promoting him, things like that, they want to make sure that he's in it for the long term, right? And then for him, before he kind of sets aside everything, maybe moves his family and whatnot, and then forgoes other opportunities, he wants to make sure that he has a long-term commitment. AKA, I don't see no ring on my finger. He wants a ring on his finger, right? So he gets a ring on his finger. In law terms, we call that the long-term contract as opposed to an at-will employment. He gets a term employment. This one is different than the at-will. So remember I said an at-will employment, they could fire somebody anytime they want for any reason at all, except these like crazy, like discriminatory reasons. All right. The contract employment for Chris Cuomo said he's set for 12 years and he's set to get $120 million. Again, the numbers are not readily available. Then it says that CNN could not fire him unless it's for a good cause. Okay. So they call it in our profession for cause termination. This is for those of you that, didn't show up to work for 5 days in a row because you were still, hungover from prom night 20 years ago, right? Okay. Oh, by the way, oh my goodness. Even nowadays, there's some argumentation that if you got fired because of alcohol problems, you may have a good case because that wouldn't be that would be kind of a discriminatory reason to fire you because it's a disability. There was a head coach at the University of Washington. He was a head football coach, and he got fired because he was starting to show up to practices and team meetings drunk, right? And so they fired him, and he, and then I think he went to go on to play at USC or a head coach at USC in LA. And same thing ended up happening. He gets drunk at meetings and things like that. They fired him at USC, and he filed some sort of claim saying, "Hey, this is a disability. You can't fire me for this." Okay, so now we get to Chris Cuomo's. Okay, I'm going to read this little provision in here, and this is the same provision that is in most contracts that say if we could fire you before the full term if it's for cause, and then the for cause says the company may terminate meaning the employee's employment for cause. Cause shall mean a violation of any material provisions of this agreement, meaning you don't show up for work, on time for a long time. Misconduct that is reasonably likely to cause material damage to the company. All right, that's a little vague, the misconduct. And lawyers, I think lawyers is the only provision where we love vagueness. Because whenever there's something that's vague, there's a lot of room for litigation, right? If something is clear, there's not as much room. But when something's vague, like misconduct that reasonably likely to cause material damage, that's vague. What the heck could that mean? Conviction or a plea of guilty to a felony. Now, that one's pretty clear. So lawyers don't like that one, but whatever, right? Unethical business activity, including but not limited to fraud, misappropriation, embezzlement, dishonesty, harassment. So if he's stealing from the company. By the way, there is a pet peeve I have and something that just freaking kills me when I read this in a contract or in a letter. Unethical activity, including, and then it says, comma, but not limited to, comma. Why? When you say including, it automatically infers that it's not the full thing. Like if I said, Joe Samo is awesome for many reasons, including he could run a mile in a minute. He could jump a 10-foot or 10-story building. He can, turn over 15 cars. If I said including, that is only some of the reasons why I am awesome. I don't have to say the words, but limited to. Anyway, failure to adequately or reasonably perform any of the material duties. That's the same thing as the other one. Okay, so those are the causes. So CNN is saying that the reason why we fired him is this: there was misconduct that reasonably was likely to cause material damage to the company. What the I'm putting here in the contract, WTF. That stands for what the fudge is that? So they're claiming that he got they properly fired him and ruined his journalist career because he helped his brother out more than he should have, and because there was a sexual allegation, of this an anonymous person from 10 years back or whatever it was, and that he did not get the opportunity to defend or question and things like that. Now, what Chris Cuomo says is this. He says he did indeed, and he did tell CNN that he was helping his brother. And come on, it's his brother. Even CNN said, yeah, we expect him to help his brother, behind the scenes. They then said something like, yeah, but we didn't know he was helping him like a lot, right? I don't know if that's going to be a good argument for CNN because that doesn't seem to me that a judge or an arbitrator would say something like that is so bad that it's going to cause damage to the company. I just don't see that myself, especially because they knew. So it's like we knew he was helping his brother, but he was like researching and he was like working extra hard. So what? I think it wasn't like he bribed anyone. It wasn't like he influenced like financially in any way. It wasn't like he went on air and he specifically did not do things like go on air and try to like sway the public's opinion or anything like that. He didn't call up any like police or prosecutors or anything like that trying to get them to not do anything. So I don't think that's gonna do it for CNN. The other thing is this anonymous tip about some sort of misconduct. I don't think, because here there is us lawyers, right? It's like we'll have a provision and then there'll be like a provision to the provision. And that provision says, in the cases of, it says A or E, okay? A is the violation of any material provisions of this agreement, and E is the failure to adequately or reasonably perform any duties. Okay, anyway. If such basis for cause is curable, you will be given a notice and 5-day opportunity to cure. CNN may have screwed up this provision to the provision because they, remember what I said a while ago about the days? The days are freaking important. So they suspend him on November 30 and they fire him on December 4. Did they give him 5 days? An opportunity, a notice in 5 days? This is us lawyers. Us lawyers love this, right? If you count November 30 as day 1, December 1, December 2, December 3, December 4, that's 5 days to me. Of course, he will say you shouldn't count the first day, or at least not the day I got fired. So if you don't count the first day or the day I got fired, then there was only 3 days, right? December 1, December 2, December 3. Even if you count one of those days, that's only 4 days. So I didn't have a proper opportunity to defend myself. Plus, you never gave me this tip that I could refute, which he did refute after he was fired. So I think he's got one heck of a good case. I think if I was asked by both parties, and I'm surprised that neither CNN's legal team or Chris Cuomo's legal team have called me yet. Let me give them my freaking phone number. No, just kidding. But if I did get a call from both of them, I would probably want to be on Chris Cuomo's side. I think he's got the better case. We will see. Except for one thing. Do you remember in the beginning when I said that this is not technically a lawsuit? It's in an arbitration. All right. This has been a very big issue of dispute in the world of law. And that is whether or not a person has to file a lawsuit in a court or in arbitration. What happens is a lot of these big companies and in almost every single time you're on the internet and you hit the words, I agree, what you don't know is that you just agreed to go to arbitration if there's ever a dispute, as opposed to being able to go to a court. A court is better in the sense that you could get a jury. A court is better that the trial will be public. A court is better because everything leading up to the trial is supposed to be public. Sometimes something could be redacted or something. Whereas arbitration can be completely secretive. There's no jury. All right. And then the other thing with arbitration that's kind of unfair is that the arbitrators get paid by the parties that are suing each other. Whereas in court, it's paid by the public. Why is that a big deal? There's this theory that there's a big financial incentive, okay, to favor the big companies, because the big companies will keep going back to arbitration, whereas the little guy doesn't go to arbitration that often, right? Like if you sign a deal with Amazon, meaning, like you get an Amazon account, or you get a Gmail account, or you get whatever, right? You don't know this, but in the button that says I agree, in those terms, you just agreed to binding arbitration. Because if you have to file a lawsuit against Google and then you have to go to an arbitration, the arbitrators know that Google is going to be coming back 10,000 times a year, whereas you're never going to come back to arbitration. And that's the theory, that there is a big financial incentive for the arbitrators to rule in favor of the big company. And that's probably why every big company does everything they can to go to arbitration. So I think that if it was a jury, I think that Chris Cuomo would have the way better case, especially if it was a jury that hated CNN, which is probably a lot of juries, especially, right? Maybe not. I don't know. But I think that Chris Cuomo would have the better case. Before a binding arbitrator, it's not like Chris Cuomo was a little guy, but yikes, I would say that he's got a tougher chance. It was almost like maybe I still think he's got the better case, but he's got the better case, but they have the better venue, if that makes sense. And this is something that us lawyers love arguing. There have been some lawsuits I've been involved in where the first 3 or 4 years of litigation, get this, the first 3 or 4 years of litigation was just over, are we going to go to arbitration or are we going to go to a court? Which is crazy, because after 3 years, like, you could go to the client and be like, yeah, we won. And the client's like, great, when do I get my money? No. We just won the right to go to court. Now we have to win the lawsuit, right? God, I hate lawyers. All right. That being said, if you have any questions, please feel free to run it by my lawyer. All right. Give me a call anytime you want. I love hearing from you folks. 619-672-1741. Again, I hope you had a great St. Patrick's Day by the time you get this. And let's see, you know what? By the time you get this, next week will be April Fool's. Start planning your April Fool's joke. Let's do something funny. If you want, call me. I'll sue someone for you as an April Fool's joke. Just kidding. All right, great stuff. See you next week.